Hello, my name is Sean Grace, and I want to welcome you to New Jersey Audubon Society's Plainsboro Preserve. Here we are, we're coming into spring, and there's many changes that are happening. And today we're going to go out for a little hike on the preserve. We're going to look for wildlife and some of the changes that are happening in the trees and some of the birds that are arriving. So come on, let's go on a little adventure. You know, here on the preserve, we've established a whole variety of habitat and homes for different animals, including these bird nest boxes that we have. And if you notice, they're paired. And the reason that they're paired is we're ultimately hoping to attract bluebirds back to the area. Bluebirds were almost extirpated by starlings, which are an invasive species of bird that were brought in from Europe here in the 1890s. And the reason we pair them is because oftentimes tree swallows are the first birds to come back. Tree swallows will utilize the boxes, but they're territorial. So if another set of tree swallows tries to set up in the box next door, they'll drive them away. And what that does is it opens up a home, in this case for bluebirds. And today what I thought we'd do is we'd investigate the nest box, take a look, and determine how we can tell that it's a bluebird nest box. Okay, again, this isn't something that we encourage, but the birds will be okay with this as long as we're in and out quick. And we're going to look inside and try and determine, yeah. And as I suspected, we've had bluebirds hanging out in this area. And this is the start of a bluebird nest. This is really classic. They make their nest out of grasses, and it'll be a woven cup. At the end of the season, when the birds are all done nesting, sometimes we'll go through and we can determine which species of bird was in the nest box just by the nests that are there. Tree swallows will almost always have feathers, and it's really interesting to watch them when they're building the nest as part of their courtship display. They'll drop the feather, and the male will come in and grab it, and they'll swoop up and they'll drop it, and then the female will come in and grab it, and that shows their ability to catch insects out of the air. But here we have a bluebird nest, and many of the bird nest boxes that we have here on the preserve, we do have bluebirds. Another real common bird that we find is the house wren. Let's see if we can't go explore a box over here and see if we find some house wrens. So we've been seeing house wrens in and out of this nest box back here. They're one of our first migrants coming back. They've been spending the winter down in the southern part of the United States. And we've been seeing activity in this nest box. I think if we're nice and quiet, I can hear it right now calling. We might be able to get a good shot of the house wrens. Here we've had house wrens. They've been investigating this box. And given the placement that it's in this edge habitat right here, we're very likely to attract wrens to this box. When we take out the nests at the end of the year to make sure that they're clean, it's always part of the ritual. They don't want to reuse a nest. They want to build a nest from scratch. It's part of their mating behavior. We're likely to find nothing but twigs. And when we find nothing but twigs, a stick nest, if you will, we know that house wrens were nesting here. We have a beautiful little cottontail rabbit right over here. It's one of the more common species found here on the preserve. One of the differences between rabbits and hares, that's a question we'll get from time to time in some of our programs that we do. Rabbits are typically born naked and blind, and the mother builds a small nest and she'll go back and visit them at the nest. If we're dealing with a hare like a snowshoe hare, they're born with hair and fur and kind of ready to roll right away. So they're much more active right away. We've been hearing a common yellowthroat, which is one of our first warbler species coming back, and we can hear him over here right now, and we're going to try and call him in. Sometimes you can get him to come in if it's called pishing, and we'll see if we can bring him in. He's coming in closer. We can tell by his call frequency. He's getting in a little bit closer right now. Okay, he's only going to be so cooperative today. He's kind of hanging right out there. I don't know if we're going to get a good shot of him. We'll try a little bit later though. Let's go. This is great. I always love to see, you know, some of the first flowering plants on the preserve. This smells really pretty. And these flowers eventually are going to turn into these beautiful red berries. And this is autumn olive. And it's a plant that's frequently planted in people's yards. This is an invasive plant. It escapes from, you know, people plant in the yards. In the fall, these will become laden with red berries. And those red berries, they have a high carbohydrate value, but they don't have lots of fat. And it's really critical for birds to get fat when they're migrating long distances. And if you look at the undersides of these leaves, they have this silvery quality. And as you're driving around and you're looking at disturbed sites where roads were and on the sides of road cuts, you're often likely to see this plant. It is dispersed by birds. Goes in one end, it's got to come out the other end. And the seeds actually plant better if they've passed through a bird's digestive tract. And although it does produce a lot of berries for birds in the fall, it's mostly carbohydrate that you find in the berries. So it's not the best food resource for birds as far as long distance migration. Some of our native plants, maybe we'll see some of those later today, have a much better food value. But right underneath it, we do have high bush blueberry. And this is one of our native plants here on the preserve. It loves these sandy soils. And if you look very closely here at the sides of these flowers, we can see where some of the local bees have decided to take the shortcut to the nectar source inside and the pollen source and avoid going straight in, and they'll oftentimes cut little holes and come in through the side. And these flowers eventually, these will become blueberries, which is a great food resource for birds and for the occasional visitor to the preserve as well. And if we come over here, this is blackberry, and this hasn't produced flowers yet. There is a price to pay for trying to get to the berries on these sometimes because it does have these thorns on it. But the berries from this plant will be loaded with vitamin C. It's a great vitamin C resource for the different wildlife. And if we look at these in combination, these plants right here, there's over 70 species of bird will utilize these for different food resources, as well as foxes and raccoons and a whole variety of mammals as well. So it's good habitat here at the preserve. This is great. We're seeing some eastern bluebirds over here utilizing some of the nest boxes that we've put up here on the preserve. So we don't normally do this as far as go in and disturb the nest site, but I think it's a good opportunity to take a closer inspection at what we're doing as far as, you know, placing nest boxes and what you're likely to attract. Come on, let's go look. Okay, here you can see we've paired two nest boxes. And there's a reason that we put them and we pair them together. Tree swallows are some of our first migrants back here, and they're some of the first birds to explore nest boxes, but they're somewhat territorial. So if a tree swallow sets up here, it'll drive tree swallows out of this nest box here, so you're likely to get an alternate species. Oftentimes, and what we're trying to attract are eastern bluebirds. And I think we have eastern bluebirds utilizing this box right here. So let's do a quick little exploration. We'll be in and out quick, and let's see if we can't find some signs of eastern bluebirds. Yeah, it's just as I thought. If you look very carefully here, this nest is all built from grasses. That's classic bluebird. Let's take a look and see if there's anything in the nest. Ooh, oh, look at this. And they're still warm from the mom bluebird. We don't want to take these out too long. But that's the color of a eastern bluebird egg. They typically lay clutches in groupings of about 5. And we don't want to keep mom off the nest too long here. But it's nice to see that some of the efforts of different volunteers that help out here at the preserve, planting nest boxes like this, that it's coming to fruition and that we're getting some birds utilizing them. Come on, let's go. Hey, check this out right here. Here, this is last year's pokeweed, and this is a plant that grew this tall last year, real fast grower, and these are the skeletons that are left over. This is a good spot to come back and find pokeweed, which is going to be a great food resource for some of our migrating birds in the fall. But right now, we can tell that it was here just by the bones that are left behind. Oh wow, look at this. This is one of my favorite things right here. Check this out. Anytime you're dealing with live stuff, this is great. There's a whole story going on here. We're dealing with a cherry tree, and here we have the eastern tent caterpillar. And cherry trees are a really important food resource for up to 200 different species of butterfly. And here we can see eastern tent caterpillar. A lot of times people confuse these with gypsy moths. They run in cycles, and they'll be heavy for 2 or 3 years out of every 10 years or so, and then they'll cycle back. So here we have a jumping spider on this moth cocoon, and it's been eating his little prize there, a tent caterpillar. I don't think he's going to have to look too hard. This tree is going to be loaded with them this year. And this is cherry. It's a long-lived tree. These guys will live about 200 years. The leaves, although they're tasty to tent caterpillars, a lot of animals have a hard time digesting them, and that's because they're loaded with prussic acid, and it's a chemical defense mechanism, especially in the earlier new growth. So a lot of species of animal that are browsers really don't prefer to eat them. Doesn't seem to bother these caterpillars too much. And there's over 200 species of caterpillars or butterfly that will utilize a cherry tree. And here on the preserve, it's some of the big showy butterflies. It'd be like eastern tiger swallowtail or red spotted purple. Those are some of the cool butterflies we'll see later in the year that utilize this. In this case, eastern tent caterpillars. Oh wow. This is nice to see. This is spring beauty, and this is one of our first wildflowers that comes out here on the preserve. And it's a 5-petaled flower. The flower only lasts about 3 days. And if you look carefully at it, it can be anywhere from pink to red, but there are these little pink lines on the petals. And that helps to orient the bees to get and use this as a nectaring source and to help pollinate it. Now these will last about 3 days. They'll die back. If you come here later in the summer, you won't even see any evidence of it. But underneath in the ground, there will be a small corm, about the size of an acorn. And think of it as a potato, and that's a good food resource for animals like white-footed mice and chipmunks. And sometimes they'll cache those and save them for later on. But spring beauty, nice flower.